Somehow Zoom kicked our chair out, so he'll be back momentarily. All right, Chair Hotbob, are you there now? Chair Hotbob, are you there?
This is Mark Noland. I made it on.
Thank you, Senator Noland. Chair Hotbob, are you there? Is Vice Chair Bentley available?
Yes, I'm on. Thank you.
Okay. Looks like Chair Hotbob is connecting, but if it kicks him out again, you're in charge. There he is.
Can you hear me this time and see me?
Yes, sir. We can do all of those things. Thank you.
I apologize. Hopefully this works. Now that I talked about we're ahead of time. Now we're behind 3 minutes, so we'll get rolling here. We've got a really tight agenda, so I guess since I've caused us to be 3 minutes late, that on me, I do ask that everybody be mindful of time, so we can try to stick to the clock. Wes will prompt everybody in terms of kind of where they're at on schedule to keep us on track. And with that, Wes, can you take roll?
You happy to? Is Dylan Clapmeyer or Governor Gianforte? Superintendent Arnson?
Good morning.
Good morning. Commissioner Swanson? Senator Noland?
Here.
Representative Seekins-Crow?
Sorry, here.
Commissioner Armstrong?
Good morning.
Commissioner McGinley? Chair Hotbob?
Here.
Vice Chair Bentley?
Here.
Chanda Hermanson?
Here.
Shane Netzweiler?
Here.
Patty Fleming?
Here.
Adam Gilbertson?
Here.
Heather O'Hara?
Good morning, I'm here.
Morning. David Smith?
Here.
Amber Terry? Amber Terry? Bo Brunsma? Dale Carpenter?
Here.
Quentin Queer? Jim Wanacott?
Here.
Deb Poteet? and Jason Palin.
Here.
I did see Commissioner Swanson is now on.
I am here, Wes. Thank you.
Okay. Let me see if anyone else that I had called has jumped on. Although we have 6 members not available, we do have a quorum, Chair.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Wes. I will jump right into the first item of business, and that is the agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda that Wes previously sent.
It's Adam Gilbertson, so moved.
Thanks, Adam.
This is Mary Armstrong, second.
Perfect. Thanks, Mary. It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The agenda has passed. Next, I'll open the floor to public comment. Do we have any? Hearing none, there'll be another opportunity at the end of the meeting as well, if we have any. Next, we'll move into last meeting minutes. I know they're posted on the website. Again, I would entertain a motion to either approve, deny, or table the minutes.
I'll move to approve.
Great. Thanks, Mark.
Chair, this is Dean Bentley. I'll second that.
Perfect. Thanks, Dean. Been moved and seconded to approve the meeting minutes of our last meeting. All those is there any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Excellent. We have motion passes. Next, I'd like to introduce Commissioner Swanson. You all know Sarah's been at these meetings for quite some time, but in this role, it's very new. Congratulations, Sarah, and I will turn it over to you for your comments.
Thanks, Paul. Hi, everyone. I think I've met each one of you except for some of our new friends from, it looks like, the OPI. So welcome to the SWIB. It's nice to have you here. I'm Sarah Swanson. I am the new commissioner appointed by the governor to lead the Montana Department of Labor and Industry. Honored to be here and so glad to have all of you with us as the tip of our spear for workforce development representing the Montana SWIB. My goals for the governor are fairly narrow for the first 3 months of my term, and I wanted to share those with you in some ways that I think SWIB can really help us execute those goals. Allowing focus to be my friend, getting my arms around an agency quite this large. We are focusing on 3 immediate initiatives. The first are relationships, working on both internal and externally, strengthening the department's relationships with industry, with stakeholders, with the education partners, as well as with our friends in the legislature. Second, we're going to focus on unemployment division modernization. You may have heard we are launching a whole new technology stack starting October 2nd with the Montana Unemployment Division that will really modernize the computer systems that we use. And following that will be a very process-driven modernization to streamline that and provide better services at lower taxpayer costs to all of our unemployment businesses and workers. And lastly is our job service offices. Starting next week, I will be on a tour of all 17 job service offices in a little over a week to get to meet the 150 folks that represent us statewide and are our faces to the public, as well as learning from them some strategies that we can streamline and build some consistencies across our offices, as well as how can we deliver through our engagement team and other external partners better industry-driven solutions to develop a workforce in an environment where we know more workers are working than ever before. We have record low unemployment, but we still have record employment gaps that our industries need to fill. So really working on retooling job service to be able to support those needs in each region and each community. Where does the SWIB come in? There are some technical details that we really need the SWIB to lead on. I'm really encouraged at the involvement that Paul Hopfoff has had in really helping to be a voice on the Tech and Innovation Hub process. We did apply for that a few weeks ago and we're just waiting to receive Montana's designation. Once we receive that, That can be as much as $700 million for the state of Montana over the next 10 years. We're really encouraged about our opportunity, and we should know soon if we get that early designation. Working with our partners in the university system, one of the critical funding streams that we're so excited to see renewed and retooled in Montana is the Perkins funding. Most of you at OPI are very familiar. You know that process is coming. Superintendent Arnson and Commissioner Christian will be appointing the Perkins task force members soon to begin rewriting Montana's Perkins plan. Simultaneous to that, Wes and the SWIB are responsible for writing the annual WIOA state plan. And so we will be utilizing SWIB over the next 4 months to develop a strategic stakeholder plan for input so that we can write our state WIOA plan and crosswalk it with Perkins so that where possible, those outcomes and measurables are tied together so that we're all working towards the same goal, using all of the federal funding that we can to really move the needle for Montana. And lastly, I know the governor chose all of you on SWIB for a very specific reason, because you are the right voices for your industry, and really elevating SWIB to be the voice as we start making policy decisions, not only here at the department, but across the administration on how are we going to use economic data to close the workforce gaps. For example, we know we need over 1,000 new construction employees every year for the next 9 years. Counting on those of you representing construction here to really bring forward-thinking ideas that can redeploy the resources that the Department of Labor deploys in Montana to close those gaps all the way. With that, I'll turn it back over to Wes and to Paul. Thank you for the invite. I'll be with you for most of today's meeting, and I'm honored to serve and glad to be with you all again.
Perfect. Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate those comments and laying out sort of your vision and direction. Again, congratulations. And Wes, I don't know if the next topic we have queued up. I'll turn it over to you to let you address that. I don't know if the Job Service Bureau Chief introduction.
So that agenda item has been removed. The current agenda that is posted on the website is up to date. The one that was originally sent out in the message had some updates to it. The next item, you got us right back on track, Chair Hopop, so thank you. The next item on it will be for Mary Heller with the Office of Public Instruction to introduce the career coaches. And I do want to just make note that we have had a number of folks join, so we are now just currently missing 2 board members, but we have 20 others now present.
Thank you, Wes and Chair Hophoff. Sarah, welcome and congratulations in your new role. I'm excited that you're there and we can build this, narrow these gaps that you talked about. With that, the Montana Ready Career Coach update, and not just Montana Ready in general, we have 9 coaches hired, and I have sent Wes an updated list of the 8. The reason there's only 8 on there is because our 9th coach technically won't start until September 5th. I'll just do a real quick rundown. We have Rachel Hagan is in Polson. Jaleesa Bencia Hensel is in Lolo. Justin Kendhammer is in Missoula. Susie Mikowski is in Townsend. Celeste Miller is in Bozeman. Crystal Wright is in Roberts. Jillian Bela is in Lewistown. Kelsey Brown is in Great Falls. And then that 9th one will be Courtney George, and she will be based out of Billings. She will be working with Kelsey and Jillian and Crystal to cover the East. I believe we're going to be at 9. We were not able to get a 10th person. I didn't want to overload one region while you're not being able to expand to the others. We are underneath the Career and Technical Adult Education Division at the OPI, and in that arena, helping with transformational learning by supporting what Katie and her team do in adult education. So working cohesively with her and her team to help all of our adult ed folks out there across the state that are trying to get back into the workforce and where we can help with that. Career and technical education. We cannot have career pathways without career and technical education. It doesn't matter if you're music or math or science, or you're in a family consumer science or an industrial tech class. Career and tech ed is the only way to do career pathways. So we work very closely with Shannon Boswell and her team of 5 specialists to get that done. And then, of course, those specialists oversee the career and technical student organizations, HOSA, Skills USA, FFA, BPA, FCCLA, DECA, and I'm sure I'm missing one that is escaping me. We are working on, in this collaboration and working with the coaches working with the specialists and with the CTSOs, pulling in and working with industry across the state to help students get industry recognized credentials, dual enrollment, and which those can go hand in hand, actually, because we, like a CNA, you can do a dual enrollment to get your CNA while you're in high school, and that is also an industry recognized credential. We're also working very heavily with our advanced opportunity schools that are out there, and also knowing that we still have $700,000 on the table. So encouraging and working with more school districts to apply for that money so that they can utilize those funds to support all of the efforts within the CTAE division. And then the big thing that we're doing is utilizing the Department of Labor's post-secondary workforce report and focusing on the areas of high need, which the big top 5 are vertical and horizontal construction, healthcare and medical, manufacturing, hospitality and tourism, business and finance, and then last, of course, I can't forget education. We need teachers as well. We're in the same boat. A lot of our teachers are retiring. We need to get some teachers in to fill those spots, and in particularly the areas of high need are early elementary, special ed, and the areas of industrial technology. With that note, I struggle to grasp put my head around, if we don't have industrial technology teachers in the school teaching those foundational skills, then how can we really truly help the skills gap in our construction industry? So that's an area of high need for sure. We are working with building on the more collaboration and partnerships. The number one and the biggest is Department of Labor. We can't do this on our own. Nobody in the state can do it on their own. So we're working very cohesively with the business engagement team. I was just in a meeting yesterday in Lewistown. I had my career coach there. The business engagement had 2 of their folks there. We had an amazing meeting with some community leaders in Lewistown and working together to make things happen in Lewistown and Central Montana area. Job service, we have a meeting next week with the Havre Job Service for one, but we've had a Zoom meeting with them, with all of the folks across the state, working with the different job services across the state. Again, how can we team together in our communities to help better serve our adult education folks as well as the K-12 schools in that area? Career Lab and MCIS, there's over 500 schools that use MCIS. And of course, then with that, they're using the Career Lab resources that Department of Labor has. So how can we steer that and guide it to support it and get more students building their career profiles and utilizing that system that Department of Labor has? And then, of course, pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship, working with the registered apprenticeship teams. So there again, we can kind of connect all kinds of dots and hit a bunch of birds with one stone. You have students who are doing dual enrollment, getting industry recognized credentials, at the same time getting their registered apprenticeship done. There's all of those dots can be connected, and we can help facilitate and work with that. JMG, we've had an amazing meeting with the JMG folks. Where does that fit into our schools? How can we utilize it? The students who are not doing CTSOs, can we hit them with the JMG curriculum, which is an excellent curriculum. Post-secondary, working very cohesively with OCHI and MOPSOC. We're planning on some events with MOPSOC in conjunction with their fairs, their career fairs they have across the state. Military, Justin Kenhammer is one of our newest coaches, and he has a military background as well as working in veteran affairs, so he can help us with that link. We also have some meetings coming up with Youth Challenge to hit that population of students across the state. And then, of course, we have lots of nonprofit entities that we're working with. One of the biggest is Build Montana with the MCA, able to help Haley Olson and David and Barry expand out to those smaller schools, like, for example, around Billings, like how to get Red Lodge students involved, Huntley Project, Rygate, some of those schools that can get more involved with Build Montana. I am on the Work-Based Learning Collaborative with Reach Higher, so we're getting geared up and having meetings there, working with Kelly and Jason and their team. I've had some amazing meetings with Peter Baker with Accelerate Montana and how to coordinate our efforts across the state. And then last but not least, and I'm sure I'm forgetting folks, but the Montana Digital Academy, having extensive conversations with them and how they can help us to get teachers and students educated virtually, especially in our rural and hard to hit areas. With that, I think I got a few minutes left. I've got a few of our career coaches on. So I will start with the first one I see on the screen is Susie Mikulski. I will introduce Susie. She is our career coach out of Townsend, and just get a quick real blurb there, Susie, of just a tiny bit of your background, and then we'll move on.
And if I may interrupt, can we just have them introduce themselves and where they're located for time's sake? Thank you very much, Mary.
Susie, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Suzanne Mikulski. Prefer to go by Susie. I am based out of Townsend. Thank you so much for having us.
Great. Jaleesa, you're next.
Morning, my name is Jaleesa Bencia. I am located in Lolo. However, my region that I'm covering is from Frenchtown all the way down to Darby. Thank you.
Justin.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to serve the Missoula, Mineral, and Sanders County. Thank you for having me.
Kelsey?
Good morning. I'm Kelsey Brown, and I am based out of Great Falls, but really privileged to be covering the Golden Triangle area of Montana.
Crystal.
Good morning. I am Crystal Wright. I'm based out of Roberts, and I will be serving in the South Central region.
Okay, and I believe that's all. Some of our other coaches had meetings today that they couldn't reschedule. Very important meetings with either industry or school districts that they couldn't reschedule. And then, like I said, Courtney won't come on until September 5th. But I did provide that list to Wes, and he can get out to the board members. I'm totally open for any questions or comments anybody has. Extremely excited about the work that's already being done and collaborating more with members of the SWIB board and our agencies that are working with us in this great effort to build Montana bigger and better and stronger. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mary. And it does look like Adam Gilbertson, the SWIB board member, has a question.
Yeah, actually, two, if you'll indulge me, Mary. First, welcome to all the career coaches. We're really excited to have you on board, and looking forward to seeing how that partnership between education and industry can move forward. Mary, the last time you were here, we talked a little bit about the funding plan for the current set in this biennium. I'm curious, one, if there's any insight about a longer term strategy on how we keep that group continuing on past the current budget cycle. And then the second question I had around that is curious, and maybe you can't answer it today, but perhaps the next board meeting, how will the data modernization efforts that the OPI is working through, how will that be engaged or utilized with these career coaches, and what does that look like?
Okay, thank you, Adam. Oh, Superintendent, I didn't want to interrupt you. You were.
I know. If I could, Wes, if I could, Adam, go ahead and speak this. I believe the budget question is extremely important. We have used our COVID money for these career coaches, and really firmly believe that workforce development, not just in the realm of education, but in our great state, for an investment toward these. We're also seeking 2 other federal grants that we will be able to gather more data and more information. Mary alluded to a conversation that just happened most recently in Lewistown yesterday with Regent Southworth and a great group of individuals that all convened. And it is about gathering data to make sure that what we're doing is right. Our school counselors have a lot on their plate, not just because of the pandemic, but not just about getting them into college, students into college. But there's a lot of things going on in schools at this point. So this career coach opportunity is a way to take something off a counselor's plate, work collaboratively with our counselors in all of our districts to have things move forward. But we're looking at some sustainability with some grants for at least a 3-year period of data. And then, of course, the company that we have secured through the RFP and the process with the Department of Administration has great dashboards. So when the data is available, it will be able to go into a so-called data lake with security, of course, to be able to have entities of government and possibly other entities reach in, gather the data, make that determination step move forward with good data. Adam, I don't know if I answered all of your questions, but they were good ones because it's about sustaining a great idea.
Yeah, thanks, Superintendent Arntzen. I appreciate that. And just, you know, it's a lot of work and effort and really important work that is being done. And just want to make sure we can keep doing it. So thank you.
Agreed. And I do believe, Mary, there's another career coach that entered into the chat.
Yes, everyone, if you'll indulge me, I would like to introduce Jillian. Jillian, go ahead and pop on and introduce yourself and where you're located.
Hi, sorry, I probably should have spoken up sooner. Yeah, my name is Jillian Bella. I am in Lewistown and I get to serve Central Montana.
Thank you. One thing I also wanted to back up what the superintendent said about the data, and this may be something that folks may or may not be aware of, but in the CTAE division, there are lots of things that there's lots of data that is gathered. So when the specialists, whether it's a family consumer science or industrial technology or any one of our 5 specialists go out and they're working with these schools and working directly with those CTE teachers, there's data that they do gather. That has been you know, I believe now, I may be wrong and the superintendent can help me on this, but it's kind of been kept at the OPI, but it's information that you all could probably benefit from. So we can pull from some of that data, as well as some of the things that they haven't necessarily tracked are, for example, what companies are coming to the table? What are the ones that are wanting to really truly work with this? And what area do they fit in? Are they healthcare? Are they construction? Are they manufacturing? So we can kind of add to that data as well. And I do know that there's extensive conversation about the data modernization plan. I fully support that. It's just that that's not particularly in my wheelhouse. There's other folks at the OPI that are working on that. So I hope that also kind of helps a little bit more answer your question, Adam.
Thank you.
Did I have any other career coaches pop on that I may have missed? I think we're good. Okay.
Mary, thank you very much. Vice Chair Dean, looks like Paul's having some connectivity issues here, so you have to bear with me as I kind of pick up my duties here, guys. So Wes, I guess continuing here, any other comment for Mary here before we move on our agenda? All right, Mary.
I'm actually back, Dean.
All
thank
right.
you for stepping in. I apologize for, this has not happened before. For someone that works from home, this is really a problem going forward. But next on the agenda, I'll turn it over to Superintendent Arntzen to talk about Perkins State Plan Review.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it. It's good to see you from Eastern Montana. If it's appropriate, Wes, can I share my screen?
You should be good to go.
Perfect. Hope you can see this. It's simple. It starts with budget, of course, first. And you can see a determination of budget. It has increased since 2020 of our state allocation. You can see that we have an enrollment increase as well over this period of time. And we have some performance measures that are there. What I wanted to go through very simply is our revision timeline. This Perkins is housed in Title 20, which is the Office of Public Instruction section of law. It's Title 27-330, and it gives the authority for the Office of the Commissioner of Higher Education and myself to work together in the revision. We've got the how do I want to say, we've got the timeline that's here. And I believe, we are in the process of beginning it. You can see we've got a stakeholder survey that's going to be created to really find out what we must and can do. I believe the most important thing is what we can do. And I believe that's where Sarah at the Commissioner Department of Labor now has shared that we can work together within the purportment of WIOA so that we don't duplicate. But again, this is held between the Office of the Commissioner of Higher Education and myself. But we do need a great understanding of what it is that we can work together. But I don't want to duplicate. I know time is precious. Are there any questions that anyone might have that I can possibly take back to our Career and Technical Education unit? And then we can possibly forward those if you need. So I'll stand for questions, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Superintendent Artson?
Chair, this is Dean Bentley. A quick question, and it might relate back to Sarah as well, but with the Tech Hub $750 million, are you guys prepping at all of how this could impact current funding, or are you leaving it as a standalone, not to impact or have any guidance towards how you're allocating your funding currently?
Absolutely. Good question, Dean. Thank you. The Tech and Innovation Hub team is co-led by Joe Thiel at OT. So he is absolutely working to align outcomes from all of OT's programming, including this Perkins State Plan reauthorization. And then we also have Mary Craigle from the Department of Commerce as a co-lead and Matt Olson from the Montana Chamber. So the three of them have really been the tip of the spear in pulling together industry, education, and state government in that Tech Hub proposal. And they're taking into account all of our other programs and federal systems.
Great, thank you.
There any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you for the update, Superintendent. It's great to see that that budget continues to grow every year.
Opportunities.
Chair Popov, may I ask a question as well?
You bet, Wes.
I did send Superintendent Artson a question, but if this could be shared with me, I would like to put this on the SWIB website as well, if that's okay with you and your team, Superintendent.
Please do. That would be great. And I know there's other materials as well as we proceed through this, of course, with this survey. And everyone that is here, of course, having an opportunity to get a reflection of what that means in their part of their community. And of course, with our career coaches across our state in the different regions, this will be something that we focus on. So more information to come for sure.
Thank you. And I'll look forward to getting that document from you.
Next on the agenda, I'll turn it over to Barb Wagner to talk about WSD 2.0.
Hey, everybody. How's it going? Our 2.0 effort is our new IT system. We are also modernizing our case management system. Our current system is called MWorks, and it is pretty old, pretty clunky and based on an infrastructure and a technology that's actually outdated and no longer supported. So the problem here is if it breaks, we're kind of up a creek. So without any paddles, we need this to be done. We've actually taken a couple of runs at this to get a new case management system in the past, and those efforts were not successful. I feel like we have learned from those efforts and that we are doing this new case management system in a way that ensures that we will be successful. I think one of the things that happened in the past is we tried to go too big and create this master system that gave us everything we wanted. We're taking the opposite approach now, that we're kind of starting with the minimum thing that we need. And then later on, once we achieve that 2.0 system, we will then kind of add on any nice to haves after that, but we're really keeping the project small and attainable to begin with. That also means that we'll be able to have an easier time funding this system and budgeting out those costs over multiple years rather than having a huge spike in our costs to do the IT system and then having lower costs in the long run. The other thing that we're doing with this system is consistent with the governor's policy and recent legislation. This will be a low code solution. One thing that I think is challenging from these legacy systems is that they were pretty much internal builds, and then we retained internal staff to kind of maintain them. And eventually that gets to a point where we're really putting a lot of money into maintenance and keeping the systems both secure and protected. There's a lot of that work that we can outsource with a low code solution. Maintaining security is one of the biggest items there. And in terms of every time we have upgrades to a new underlying code, they go from, Android KitKat to Android whatever, just as an example, that's all done by the underlying provider. We will be going with ServiceNow as that underlying provider. And then in order to do that, you have a vendor to kind of customize that underlying solution for you. And our vendor is going to be Deloitte. We just signed that contract by the end of the fiscal year, so we could use some of our savings from the last fiscal year to put towards that contract. We're on track with our budget in order to make sure that happens. And then later today, I'm super excited. We're going to have our kickoff meeting. We have a team of about 10 people of my WSD staff who are going to be mostly dedicated to that project in the next 2 months to make sure that the Deloitte folks are building a system that's going to meet our needs. And then the system, they're going to continue to work on that in terms of coding and then launch testing, training. And by this time next year, we hope to have that system launched out. So that's the big master plan for it. I'm pretty excited that we will get it launched because we've been working on this system for a while. I think our approach is guaranteed to be successful. And you guys maybe don't know this about me, but I tend to be very, very persistent. So I'm pretty certain that we're going to make this system happen and get it launched by our deadline if I have anything to say about it. So that's good news. And I'm pretty excited to have a new system, and our staff is very, very excited to get a new system. Our old one literally looks like it's straight out of the 80s with this little blue screen that it's only this big on your screen. You can't like blow it up to the full size of the screen. It doesn't even work that way. So questions? Paul?
No. Any
Okay.
questions for Barb?
No questions, but Barb, thanks for that report. Exciting. I love your enthusiasm. Good luck.
Thank you. I am very excited about it, and thank you for the luck. We might need it a time or two, but I really am feeling positive about how we have the whole plan set up. So now it's just about execution.
Yeah, no questions here, Chair, but Barb, it's fun to see you get excited about something like that. So excited to have reports quicker and everything too. So you guys are rocking it. Congratulations. Good luck.
Yeah. Thank you. And as you might imagine, Dean, I am very interested in developing the analytic solutions that are coming out of this system too. So we're going to be linking that up to Snowflake, and it is my economist team that's setting up all those dashboards and whatnot. We are also in the process at the same time working to get all of those analytics kind of tested out and have a chance for our staff to kind of feel them out and make sure they're feeling right, so that when we launch the system, we can have a system of analytics to be providing better data to everyone as well. So it really is data that I'm excited about, Dean. That will not surprise you.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's going to drive everything and help us make better informed decisions. And so having those dashboards, yeah, super excited. It's awesome to see in the years leading up to this what's developed. So congratulations. Big
Thank
deal.
you. Thanks. I see Heather has her hand up too.
Yes. Hi, good morning, Barb. Thank you for
Good
your
morning.
presentation. I like data too. So question for you. I'm wondering, as we do our SWIB meetings throughout this next year, will you be able to provide updates to us in regards to what the status is? And then maybe at the end, a year from now, will you be able to kind of walk us through how it looks and just show off the new baby that you'll have here?
I'd be happy to do that. I'm happy to provide updates, and I'm sure Wes is happy to put me on the schedule for that. And we could do a little walkthrough too. I think that makes sense. And also keep in mind, it's not just Department of Labor that uses this system. It's all of our providers that we have out there. And we have involved all of them in the process of documenting all of our requirements. So, and they will also be involved in some of the testing process so that we make sure that we're doing a good job for our providers as well as our internal staff. So
perfect. Thanks, Barb.
Yeah, thank you. I'm also scheduled to give an update on RESEA, that program. If there's no more questions about our IT system, I can go into that. Okay, let me do a little share screen here. Should be this one. Okay, I can still see most of your faces here, so let me know if you have any questions and need me to stop. So the RESEA program, can everybody see the screen, by the way? I should give a thumbs up there. Okay, cool, thank you. So RESEA stands for Reemployment Services and Eligibility Assessment. It's no wonder that we just call it RESEA. Some people call it RESA. And what this does is it is a federal program, and we work with unemployment insurance on it. The funding comes directly to UI and WSD. It isn't funding that comes through the SWIB board, but you guys should know about this program because it's an important part of our services. And it's also one of the ways in which we recruit unemployment insurance claimants into our WIOA programs like dislocated worker. So let's see if I can get my slides to move forward. There we go. So that's kind of the overview of what we're going to be talking about today, but I'll just dive right in. So what the goal of RESEA is to take people who are currently on unemployment insurance, and then we do a virtual appointment with them. We used to do in person, but now we're at virtual as part of the pandemic and also part of something we're studying, but it allows us to cover more areas of the state and not just people that are close to our job service offices. So those appointments are conducted virtually. We have a team of 19 of our job service staff that are trained to do these appointments. They also happen in 12 different job service offices. So what they do during that is basically they give them an overview of our services, and they kind of tell them, hey, let's connect you with job training in this part of this. Each week, about 124 new claimants are referred to the program. We don't actually do 124 each week. There are some weeks that we do not have 124 claimants because our unemployment rate is so low right now, but we try to get as close to that 124 as we can. Military claimants are on top of that because they do also need additional assistance in coming back into the workforce. And who we're trying to target there. I mean, some weeks we don't have enough, we don't have 124, right? But what we try to do when we have enough claimants is we target people who are most likely to exhaust, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. So this is a required thing for if you are selected for RESEA, you must come to your RESEA appointment. Otherwise, we will cut off your unemployment insurance benefits. So we do have a lot of people who come. This is a pretty high turnout for our appointments. There are people who we do kick off UI for that, but if they can't make their appointments, we do everything we can to reschedule with them. We get about 150,000 per year in funding. This is one of the few areas where our federal funding is actually increasing over the years. Most of our WIOA programs are decreasing funding, particularly after considering for inflation. So this has become a more important part of our services that we're providing at the Department of Labor. In an appointment, they meet with a career coach to be assessed for their continued UI eligibility. We answer questions about how to make sure that they're doing the job search and whatnot. We register them with the job service and we develop an individualized employment plan for them. If they need it, then they will be referred to other services and programs that we might need. For example, if they want to change careers, we can put them into training and enroll them into dislocated worker and make that happen. If they need, let's say they don't have a suit and they need to go to a job interview, we can help with some of that if that's needed, and obviously following all of our WIOA rules otherwise. So those appointments can last up to 1 hour. So they typically last a little over an hour. It's pretty intensive. And then if we need to, they can have follow-up appointments after that with our job service staff. Now, everybody is in the selection model except people who are job attached or union. The job attached means that they are currently unemployed, but their employer is going to re-employ them later. That's a lot of construction workers, to be honest, but there's often layoffs in Montana that are just a couple months and then they come back to their same employer. Out-of-state claimants are not in our selection model. They should be getting picked up by other states RESEA programs, and then a couple of other things that are pretty rare that are not that interesting. And if you need to know that, I'll have to ask my staff. So I don't even know all of those. So we only have the 124 slots, but they are prioritized by how likely they are to exhaust their benefits. Exhaust their benefits means that they hit all 26 weeks of employment benefits that they're eligible for, and they're still unemployed. Past some of the claim characteristics that we look at include their past claims experience, how often it was, whether or not they exhausted the last time, what their education degree is. Sorry, this should say graduate degree is more likely to exhaust. I'm going to blame my boss for the fact that it just says more likely to E, because the reason I didn't finish that word is because I realized I was late to our meeting and I had to run upstairs. So Sarah's fault. We also look at the local job market and how likely people are in that county to exhaust their benefits, the number of jobs they've had in the last years, and the ratio of unemployment benefits to previous wages. And you would not be surprised, I made a little chart to show you what this means, right? I had to give you at least one chart in this presentation. So this chart kind of shows the distribution of how likely they are to exhaust. So, we have a lot of people who are on unemployment insurance benefits, and this is the number of people on the vertical axis and the number of weeks unemployed. And so like most of our people are on unemployment just for, 4 to 6 weeks, and they hit this, and then we slowly have fewer and fewer people. They find a job after a couple months and they don't actually get to the end of their benefit eligibility. But there are some people who are towards the end of their eligibility. We're getting out to the 26-week time frame. By the way, you can actually extend beyond the 26 week if you start working part-time. You can go longer than 28, but whatever. So then they might exhaust their benefits and they're still unemployed after that point. And once people are in this long-term unemployed category, it's really, really hard to get them back into the labor market. It's pretty challenging. They've already adjusted their budget so that they don't have to go back and get a job. And they tend to get really disengaged, and we end up never getting them back into the labor force. So that's what we're trying to avoid here, is to make sure that people get back employment. They don't exhaust their benefits, which saves the trust fund money, but also they retain participation in the labor force. And you would think that the people who end up in that very long likely to exhaust category are like low education, low wage employees, because we think that those are difficult to employ. But it's actually a little bit weird who ends up exhausting. People who are in low wage jobs and often with low levels of education and experience, they actually are able to find jobs very quickly, and they tend to churn pretty often. And if you have frequent job changes in the past, you're actually more likely to get reemployed quickly and be like one of these people who end with just a few weeks of unemployment. And that's different than what I think most people think. They think the people who are going to be long-term unemployed are people who are low skilled. They actually tend to be people who are highly customized. If you are a rocket scientist, it is hard for you to find another rocket scientist job. I actually have my brother and my brother-in-law are both computer programmers who have been laid off in the last year. They're making over $140,000. It is hard for them to find another job in Montana that pays that much in their very highly specialized career field. They are the people we are worried about exhausting, because it's hard to find another one of those jobs. There are other things that
Barb, I need their numbers. We're not paying that much.
Okay, well, I will give you their numbers. Ben doesn't live out of state, and technically he still gets paid by Google until the end of the year. And he gets paid more than you can afford, 100%. But my brother-in-law in Bozeman, you can have his number.
Okay, thanks, Barb.
I think we could work out there. Also, there is a tendency that the frequent job changes is also something that's really interesting. People who go through job search often get good at it. People who only have to find a job once every 10 years, turns out they are not very good at searching for a job. So that is something that's a little different than what you would think. And it's also true that when we have these conversations about unemployment insurance and how we're cutting off benefits and how many weeks of benefits they have, I do think that people have a different idea of who's ending up in those long duration unemployment than what is actual. The actual people you're cutting off are highly educated people who struggle to find a job because they're looking for a very, very specific job. So, okay.
Barb, can I ask one question back there? I'm sorry. You talk about the number of people. So when they're picked up for those 100, and you said you've got 124 slots available. Is that capturing everybody at that exhaust benefit timeframe, or are we leaving people out?
Great guess. This is actually what I'm talking about in this next little demonstration. Oops, went too far. So what happens is this guy is named Joe, right? We know that Joe right now is like, he's had a couple weeks of unemployment, but he's not towards the exhaustion right yet. We know that if Joe, based off his characteristics, we put this through a model, you can call it machine learning if you want, it's just a logit model. We know that he is very highly likely to exhaust. If we just did nothing, he probably will end up over here past the exhaustion line. He has like a 90% chance of exhausting. And that's based off his characteristics. We get him when he's over here, and we pick him up during his first month of unemployment. And we say to him, hey, how can we help you find a job more quickly? And that has been shown that just this phone call does actually get people really focused and thinking about how long their unemployment is going to be, and then helps them get back into the labor market more quickly. So that's kind of how we do that. We do pick them up within the first month, but it's based on a model. a statistical model of whether or not, where we think they're going to end up. And we pick up people who are likely to be over here. So, okay. Great question. So this is kind of our statistics over the last year. Our overall participation rate is 64%. The other ones either have some reason that they don't do RESEA. Maybe we had them, they're actually job attached, or to be honest, right now, most of them have already found another job. That's happening pretty often. We don't kick very many people off UI through this program, but we do have some. And then 12% of them end up going through, sorry, this is a kind of a weird statistic. So of our job service clients that we give services to, 12% of them came to us through RESEA. So it's an important part of bringing in clients into the rest of our WIOA programs. One thing about RESEA is they require us to use evidence-based strategies. So we have to prove to them that our methods that we're using during these phone calls have already been proven by research that they are effective in getting people reemployed more quickly. The whole program has to constantly prove its existence, which I actually love because, you know, I like good data and research study. So right now we're actually doing an RESEA intervention that, and sorry, I kind of got ahead of myself. It's part of our funding is actually dedicated to proving that the strategies work. That's basically what this side says. What we are working on right now is whether or not providing RESEA virtually versus in person leads to better outcomes. To us, it's really important that we can provide RESEA virtually because it allows us to provide services to all of our unemployment insurance clients, regardless of where they live in the state. And it brings them into providing, you know, there's really no way for someone that lives in Southwest Montana to really get into our WIOA programs without having us being able to call them through RESEA and then get them enrolled in WIOA. So we're doing a randomized control trial right now, which is kind of like the gold standard of evaluation testing. And that randomized control trial is already underway, and we're planning to complete it in the fall. We've actually been working, like we started the planning this randomized control trial probably back in 2017. We got a grant through an organization called JPAL that's at the MIT to kind of give us some background and training. That was our economist team met with them. And then we worked with several state and national experts on that to develop this plan to do the RTC. Then the pandemic hit, and then we couldn't do it for a while because it was the pandemic. And so now that the pandemic is over and we're back to kind of normal business, we launched doing the RTC last fall, and then like the trial period where we're collecting data will go through this fall, and then we'll have some data to show you. So that's all I have. I think that's the end of my, yep. Any questions about RESEA?
Hearing none, are there any questions for Barb? Thank you, Barb. That what a fantastic program. And I would have been one of those people that would have been completely opposite in my thinking on that chart you showed.
It surprises, and in fact, it even surprised me when we did the modeling. It is a surprise. And I think that's something that it's important to know when you're talking about policies and talking about our programs. Like we tend to target our WIOA funding to people who have need, and that's important. But it's also important to remember that there are people who are well-skilled, who are challenged in refinding a job. They want that job. They have a lot of great skills. It's just about finding the right match with the employer, and sometimes that takes a lot of time.
It makes sense after you explained it. I just would have been not what I expected. But,
yeah.
And I love the data and persistence. That's going to be my motto for the rest of the day.
I like that. Well, we
Thanks again.
probably have the results of the randomized control trial. I'm sure we'll have that available for you guys to look at sometime this fall, once we get it all put together. So.
Awesome. We're a little bit ahead of schedule. Go ahead, Wes.
Sure, I
Dean,
have one
sorry.
more question for Barb. Sorry here. Barb, with those highly skilled people, like you're saying that you guys are identifying these, is there any geographical region that's out, showing more need, or is there any data, showing specific areas that there's a concentrate of these employees?
That's a great question. There are trends that we can see like that. And in the past, that's something that we would have shown, like, for example, lots of layoffs in the mining industry. Most miners have been employed for a very long time. They're a high wage job. Their wage replacement rate is not very high because they would cap out on our benefits. So they probably would have been selected for benefit exhaustion and probably targeted. So we would have seen a concentration on that. Right now, we're not seeing any concentration. And I will also say, if you made a map of, exhaustion rates, you probably would just have the same map that's similar to an unemployment insurance. Like, if their unemployment rate is high, we're going to have more people that fall into this category. So I don't think it's necessarily a distribution across the state. Just if you have more unemployment, you're probably going to have more people who are exhausted. So, but that's a great question.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Barb.
Well, I like it when I get done early. So there we go.
As Barb said, we are a little bit ahead of schedule. Next on the agenda is Kelly Cresswell to talk about work-based learning collaborative update. Kelly, the floor is yours.
Wonderful, thank you. It's great to be here with all of you. I too am going to share my screen. Get this going. All right, so let me introduce myself. I am Kelly Cresswell. I'm the Executive Director of Reach Hire Montana. We're a nonprofit organization. We're headquartered here in Helena, but we work statewide, primarily with high school students. We have a team of career and education outreach folks. They're all certified career development facilitators and have extensive previous experience working in education. They provide outreach to schools, primarily the smaller schools. So we don't do outreach in the AA schools. We focus our efforts on those smaller schools, helping students explore what their future opportunities may be, how they can prepare for those, and how they can enter the fields of interest that they wish to pursue. We have 5 of those folks. They work geographically. They do an awesome job. Some of you know Jason Butcher. He's on the call with me today. Those folks all report to Jason and just really do an excellent job reaching out to students all throughout the state. We also deliver grants and scholarships for Montana students. Last fiscal year, we delivered over $1 million in funding to help students pay for education and training. And we have specialized programming for youth in the foster care system and or experiencing homelessness. And those programs are delivered in partnership with the Department of Public Health and Human Services and OPI. So we've been doing those programs for a long time as well. And we're also a convener of cross-sector partnerships like the Work-Based Learning Collaborative that I'm going to talk about today. So if you want to know more about Reach Hire Montana, that's not the purpose of today's presentation, but you're certainly welcome to ask me any questions or check out our website. So the Work-Based Learning Collaborative is not very old. It's about 2 years old, and I'm really delighted to have the opportunity to share with you some of our work and how we got to where we're at this point. So why have a collaborative? We convene stakeholders who are focused on work-based learning. We have a really big vision and goal that we're working towards, so we're monitoring progress toward that big goal. And we look across the landscape at challenges, gaps, and opportunities to expand participation in work-based learning. So those of you who are involved with Department of Labor, or OPI, or OCHI, work-based learning is a big part of the work that you do, and you do so very, very well. There are also partners outside of those government-funded streams who provide work-based learning opportunities. and there are end users of work-based learning that may or may not be fully aware of all the opportunities that are available and how to access those. So through the collaborative, we bring together a wide network of partners to talk about those things and to figure out what we can do to make it easier for students and businesses to participate in work-based learning. So this is our big vision. We want every young adult in Montana to have multiple pathways to economic self-sufficiency, supported by a statewide work-based learning system that honors the potential of students and addresses the workforce needs of Montana businesses today and tomorrow. And that balance of certainly providing student opportunities, but paying just as much attention to what businesses need and how we can support them to be engaged in work-based learning, those are equal points on our scale of what we're trying to balance with this work. We have a lot of folks involved in the work-based learning collaborative, many of whom are on this call. Sarah Swanson's been a big part of this work, as has Dylan Plattmeyer, Patty with the Montana Manufacturing Extension Center, Bo with Billings Public Schools. And Wes was able to attend our retreat this past summer, so we were delighted to have Wes join us as well. But you can see this broad cross-section of stakeholders, which also includes some funders from inside and outside of Montana. There's a lot of interest in work-based learning and how we can do this more effectively and provide high-quality experiences for students and for businesses. So this is our group of folks that works on the collaborative. As I said, we've been doing this for about 2 years, so I'll cover some of our highlights. We convened for the first time in the summer of 2021 at the invitation of the Arthur M. Blank Family Foundation. We were able to go to West Creek and bring together some partners to talk about what are we seeing with work-based learning? Is this a need? Is this something we could do together? And that group of stakeholders agreed that yes, this is something that we can collaborate on to improve. We've done some internal work to make sure the collaborative is supported. We also conducted a data landscape analysis with Kinetic West. So the Blank Foundation funded Kinetic West to work with us. Kinetic West is a boutique consulting firm that focuses specifically on work-based learning and workforce development. They work with a number of entities across the country, and they've just been outstanding help for us as we've done this work. So Kinetic West did that analysis of the current state of work-based learning data and showed us where there may be some opportunities to improve. We also adopted this work-based learning continuum that, as I said before, we're really focused on making sure we balance the needs and opportunities for students with the needs and opportunities for business. There are lots of different continuums around work-based learning for various programs. This one is envisioned to kind of pull together all of the partners. So there are some that are used, other types of continuums that are used with particular programs, and that's awesome. You saw the long list of partners that we have. There are certainly some things that are customized within some of those, but this is envisioned to kind of encompass all of the things that happen with work-based learning in Montana. We also partnered together to bring some training for employers who wish to host interns, apprentices, even shorter term work-based learning opportunities. We brought Intern Bridge to Montana in our first year. They did some excellent training, and that was a recommendation from Wes. Wes has been a great resource in connecting with Intern Bridge and making those resources available for employers. My organization, Reach Higher Montana, has a youth apprenticeship program. We were able to place our first nursing youth apprentices in Billings, and they are continuing to do great work. We did some work figuring out how we would measure the success of the collaborative. And we worked together to launch a teacher externship program in manufacturing, which has been really cool. We received some funding from the Dennis and Phyllis Washington Foundation to do this. Initially, we started in a partnership with MMEC. Patty was a great partner in getting this program launched. The initial teacher externships were a 5-day experience. The teachers received a $1,000 stipend for participating, plus some continuing education renewal units. Our expectations for that time was that they were able to include what they learned into their lesson plans and to share what they learned with their peer educators. So it was really cool. We were able to facilitate some connections between educators and employers that hadn't existed in the past. And many of them are continuing to work together to bring opportunities for students to also have similar opportunities. I don't know, Patty, if you want to jump in and say anything more about teacher externships?
I would say that from the manufacturer's standpoint too, it was a huge success. They absolutely loved it. And most of them have continued in doing it in a second year and hope to do it in the third year.
Thanks, Patty. This past year, we were invited back to West Creek to be the guests of the Blank Foundation this past August, or last August, and had really another great gathering of folks to talk about what we've accomplished together so far and what's possible for the future. We received some funding from EdChoice to hire Kathleen O'Leary to provide some coordination support for a year period. She's just wrapping up that contract with us, but it was super helpful. As you can see, things have gained a lot of momentum, and it does take some help coordinating this work. So we were delighted to have Kathleen's expertise. We were also able to bring in some presentations at our quarterly meetings so that folks in the collaborative all have the opportunity to hear from some experts both in the state and across the country. So we had Accelerate Montana, for example. They've since joined the collaborative, and Pathful for Montana, which is a career information system that shared some great information with us. We've also seen increasing interest about the collaborative, so we presented at a number of state and national conferences about the work that we're doing together. We launched a new collaborative webpage. If you want to check that out, it's wblmt.org. We also published employer and student toolkits. So sometimes some of the feedback we had from employers was that they very much want to do work-based learning. They're not quite sure what to do with the student who's coming to work with them. So the toolkit is designed to help them think about how they might frame a high-quality work-based learning experience for a student who's coming to be on their work site, whether it's for a job shadow or a youth apprenticeship, and anything in between. Likewise, with the student toolkit, we wanted to provide some opportunities for students to see what the benefit was to them to engage in work-based learning and what they might need to do in order to get the most out of that experience. So both of those resources are available on the website. We also have some printed ones. If anybody wants copies of those, we're happy to share. We've also done a lot more work around data, and I'm going to go into that into a little more depth in a moment. We completed a data measurement plan. So how would we measure the success of work-based learning or even the existence of it statewide? So that's the purpose of that plan. We conducted a number of listening sessions with youth, educators, and employers on their perspectives of work-based learning and what types of things they're interested in seeing more of. We doubled our teacher externships. So as Patty said, the manufacturers really love this program. Many of them came back again this year. We were also able to add some healthcare experiences for teachers to have, which has been really, really positive. We did shorten it a little bit based on the feedback from employers and educators. So it's now a 3-day experience, and the stipend likewise is reduced to $600, but they still receive those continuing education units. And they are still expected to share what they learn with others. So it's been really fun to hear from them what that experience has been like. We're also doing some work expanding, trying to figure out what is the full landscape of work-based learning across the state. So trying to map out who is doing what, where, for whom, and who or where is underserved, and where might we as partners collaborate and lean in to make sure more students have these opportunities if they're not currently being provided. So let me jump into the data. When we started this work, there were lots of questions that we couldn't answer. So how many students participate in work-based learning at the K-12 and the post-secondary level? What are students interested in participating in? How many employers offer work-based learning opportunities, and for whom, and what models are they using? Do students who participate in work-based learning have better outcomes, and is it possible to measure that? Are we advancing equity in work-based learning by gender, ethnicity, region of the state, all of the things? Are we making sure that everyone has these opportunities? And what is the program quality like for work-based learning models? Do students and employers have good experiences? Are they able to use what they've learned? Is it valuable? Are students safe? Those are all questions that we had that we didn't have great answers for. So since then, as I mentioned, we've done some pilot work collecting student, educator, and employer voice. We have our data measurement plan. We have our original data landscape analysis that we talked about. And we've continued to do those surveys with youth and educators primarily around their perspectives. So that work continues. The data measurement plan, this is our logic model, our theory of change for what we want to do with that data. So we want to make sure we have input from educators, youth, and employers. The outputs we seek are increased interest in work-based learning by both youth and employers, expanded employer-based opportunities in high-growth industries that pay living wages, and increased participation in work-based learning overall by youth and employers. So not only are they interested, but they're taking action to be engaged. And the long-term impact that we see from this work is that young people will be better prepared for future employment success, and employers will have an expanded pool of skilled workers to draw upon. The data that we're tracking has been somewhat of a challenge for us. So we have some data that we have access to. So like I said, the youth and educator voice, that is a piece that we have a survey and a template that we've developed as a collaborative that we use to capture that data. Certainly there's labor market information about apprenticeship and workforce participation among youth, which is super helpful. There's some data available on the work-based learning credit through OPI. As far as the number of students who earn that credit, we're curious as to what levels of detail can we get to as far as what that credit represents. So was it, what type of activity was it, how long was it, et cetera, et cetera. Likewise, interested in learning more about the number of students who receive work-based learning credit for internship placements, for example, through OCHI. On the employer side, we would be very curious in learning more about how many employers participate in work-based learning. Are employers aware of these opportunities? And of those who are interested, are they participating? And then we have a whole series of questions around workforce health and how that impacts work-based learning. And some of that data, may be forthcoming through Department of Labor and Industry and other partners who are working on new data models. But those are the questions that we have, and you can see where we feel like we don't really have a great indicator for data currently. So as we move forward into year 3, we got to go back to West Creek again. So you can see the crew that was there. There's some familiar faces. So in addition to Patty, you can see Bo Brunsma and Wes, and other folks who are on this call, Jackie Treaster, Anna Smith from Montana Primary Care Association. So again, the commitment and interest in doing this work is really impressive, and it's truly what sustains the collaborative going forward. This is not a Reach Higher Montana initiative. We're the convener and we participate in it, but really it takes all of us for this work to be successful. We have some project-based work groups that will be working over the coming year and beyond. So we have a programs work group that is working on framework and essential components of high quality programs and bringing in best practices, helping to recruit and train teachers to offer more work-based learning experiences. We're interested in working on some policy explainers and a work-based learning definition that includes the work of the legislature this past session, but also includes definitions that are encompassing of the full continuum of awareness activities all the way to the things that are covered in some of the other definitions. We're really dialing down on the data piece of this. We hope to create a data dashboard for work-based learning. We want to continue to strengthen our communications and marketing and focus on our capacity. So how do we continue to fund this work sustainably? How do we continue to bring on new members in a way that is meaningful? We want to, of course, have our annual retreat where we can really dive in over a series of a few days to look at what's facing the work-based learning landscape. So the full collaborative meets 4 times a year. We have quarterly meetings plus our annual retreat, and then those work groups meet throughout the year based on a schedule that they work on to accomplish those activities. So as I said, if you have questions, you can visit the website wblmt.org, or you can contact me. Bo and Patty are both on the call today, so I don't know, Bo, if you have anything you want to share about the collaborative.
So, as Kelly said, I've been a participant on it from the get-go, and it's been a lot of benefits to our school district for me, like having a seat at that table that trickles down to students. So, Kelly talked about externships expanded to medical. We've had students that have been with manufacturers. So the teacher that Kelly showed for one of the externships is a Billings Public Schools teachers. It's helping our teachers engage with local partners. We also had one in medical this year. So we had one of our medical teachers, and it's a little anecdotal, but she's teaching new classes this year. She's taking on an operating room class, and she hasn't been in an operating room in 10 years. And so she was able to do a 3-day externship with one of our local healthcare providers, facilitated by the this idea is facilitated by the collaborative and supported by members of it. And she came back. We just got back in touch with her the last couple of days, Jason and I did, and she could not have spoken more highly of that experience. She got to see all the different occupations involved. She's teaching this new class, and she felt like, hey, it's always a little daunting when you're doing something different than you've done the last couple of years. That was hugely and immensely helpful for me to do that and be able to bring back to my classroom. She wants to speak at conferences. She wants to speak to her team. She wants to talk about the value of an externship experience. So that's just like a teacher that has that access to this. And then that's going to, obviously, like I said, the whole goal is that it trickles down and benefits students. She's made an industry connection. She's going to have a better grasp around those classes that she's going to teach. And she's already thinking of opportunities that can open up for students now that she's established that relationship as far as work-based learning. Not to mention just like the networking that the collaborative allows you to do. And if you're not a part of the collaborative, how helpful it is to be networked to other people. So there are there's a million schools or hundreds of schools in this state that aren't on the collaborative, but that have gotten access to work that the collaborative has done that has benefited their schools and benefited their students. And last thing I'll say is just it's very intentional in trying not to be a duplicate of work that's already being done. If anything, the collaborative has been a champion of the things that OPI, DLI, OCHI, all the things that if there's tools already available, we're not looking to recreate the wheel or redo our own thing. They're really trying to just be champions and get the information that's already available to those schools and just be another person, another entity involved in doing that. So I can't speak highly enough about like my personal involvement as well as like what our school district has benefited from it. And it's a group that there's a lot of dynamic individuals that are all, and the fun thing is that we all have the same goals. We all have the same, we want what's best for Montana students and best for our Montana businesses. So it's can't speak highly enough of the collaborative. I see Shane's got his hand up, so.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Kelly, thank you. Again, great presentation and just really exciting to see this work-based learning collaborative. And so a couple of things. I know Scott Wolf, our executive director of Central Montana Works, was there too, and just really excited about the work that's going on. And I know you have, as you go into communities, you invite chambers to, and I'll continue to just really visit about that. A lot of the chambers, the major ones, have hired a workforce development director on their teams. We're up to 2 now in Great Falls already with the work we're doing. And so we also, and I just want to plant the seed with you, the workforce development directors are meeting monthly. So we need to invite you to that meeting as well too, as they talk about the work they're doing in their individual communities on this. But I think one of the key components of this is having industry drive the conversation. They know what they need. They know what they need from the students coming out of high school. And so sometimes we've had some difficult conversations with our welding industry, with the schools saying, you know what, we gave you some curriculum that we need to be taught. And now it's 2 years later, where are we at on that? And so let's start this fall. Let's start teaching the curriculum for these students rather than they're trained in welding, but they're coming out, but they're still not ready to start. And we want them to start with the soft skills, the basic skills to start welding immediately. And so it's been great partnerships that we've developed. So again, thank you. Great presentation. Great work you guys are doing.
Thanks so much, Shane. I was part of starting Helena Wins here at the Helena Chamber. So very much appreciate the work that local chambers do and really loved having Scott at the collaborative meeting this past year. He's a great partner and would love to visit with that network of chamber workforce development folks anytime.
Yep, you bet.
And anything we can do to help, let us know.
Sounds great. Thank you.
There is a question from the public as well, from Mary Heller. And Adam Gilbertson also has a question.
Yeah, so
Thanks, Wes.
Go ahead, Mary.
Yeah, so Kelly, I ditto what Bo has said. It's great to be on that collaborative and really appreciate the fact that we can help with those teacher externships and the connections to the CTE teachers for the work-based learning work that's going on. We know that we have to make sure it's work-based learning, true work-based learning, and not just a work release and stuff. So really excited to be on that and be involved. I was very bummed that I missed the collaborative this summer. I had another engagement, but one of the things I was wondering if you could kind of clarify just for everyone is where you had mentioned that the funding comes from the Dennis and Phyllis Washington Foundation. I know that the OPI has given some funding for some of the things that you're working on, but where does the other funding come from? That's one question. And then the other is the apprenticeships. Are they registered apprenticeships or not?
Sure. So I'll start with that question. Our youth apprenticeships, we leave it up to the employer if they want to register their apprenticeships or not. So if they do wish to register, we contact the Apprenticeship Bureau at Department of Labor and Industry. They've been really strong partners for us, and we help facilitate those connections. If the employer does not want to do that, that's their choice. So that one's pretty easy to answer. The funding, do you mean the funding for Reach Higher Montana or for the collaborative specifically?
Reach Higher in general, and then the collaborative would, I guess, twofold. Thanks.
So the collaborative is funded by Reach Higher Montana. We're providing the staffing support for that and some additional supports. Funding from the Blank Foundation, Ed Choice, Dennis and Phyllis Washington Foundation. So that's what is sustaining the collaborative specifically. Reach Higher Montana is funded on earnings from investments and then a couple of grants and contracts. But our investment earnings funds about 2/3 of our budget annually. Grants and contracts make up the other third.
Awesome. Well, again, it's great to be on that collaborative. I appreciate being involved and look forward to more work. We've got some meetings coming up and really looking forward to working with you guys and what the OPI can bring to the table to support it.
Thanks, Mary. Yep, OPI is a big partner.
I wanted to mention one more thing as well, but I'll let Adam. I know Adam's been raising his hand, but I let Adam go and then I'll go after.
Are you sure, Bo? You can go if you want to.
No, you're good. I saw your hand up and I was like, oh, I better let Adam go. I stepped on you a little bit. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. Kelly, I was wondering if you might speak to a little bit, and I don't intend this as a gotcha question, more about curiosity. But
sure.
Bill 444, work-based learning, and put some clarity in law around what that was. And I was curious how that has impacted Reach Higher, the work you're doing, and just kind of briefly of what impact it's had on the work.
So I would say it's certainly a great clarification of what the legislature views as work-based learning. So as we look at our definition and that continuum of what work-based learning activities are, we certainly want to make sure that we're aligned with that. And we want to make sure that we're being encompassing of all other versions of work-based learning that may be outside of those particular work-based learning funded programs from the state that are really targeted at high school students. So we hear all the time that students need access to this information earlier and more often. And some of that, might be an awareness activity that is not necessarily part of a structured on the job site work-based learning program, for example. So I would say, the clarity is great. Yeah, I don't know that I could really say it's impacted us directly in what we're doing, but we certainly appreciate the clarifications.
I could also address that a little bit too, if I may. So work-based learning, this is a big deal because I had referenced earlier that it's different than work release. There's not anything wrong with students who get out of school and they want to go work at Subway or whatever. There's nothing wrong. I'm never going to say there's anything bad with students going to work, but work-based learning, as defined by what Kelly's talking about, what the OPI looks at, we really look at the Association of Career and Technical Ed because that's the guru. They're the ones who have done work-based learning forever. So when our CTE teachers are working with employers and students to do a true work-based learning experience, it's making sure there's learning outcomes and objectives, there's some assessment, there's true mentorship, and that student is really truly in a learning experience and not just working, not to just be, lack of better word, slave labor. Again, I'm never going to be an opponent of students who want to work, but work-based learning is way more involved. And we would mirror what Kelly and the team are doing, which is why I'm part of that collaborative, as well as Shannon Boswell is part of that, is to make sure that it's being done the right way. So I hope that kind of backs up that too.
Bo, you had a question or something to add?
I had another, like, I forgot when during your presentation, your apprenticeship, like youth apprenticeship, that was something that I was involved with in my previous position with Montana Registered Apprenticeship, walked into it here. Just like the types of like benefits that it provides students, again, that the one that you pointed out, St. John's United, it's a CNA to LPN or RN apprenticeship, basically, where it allows students to work as a CNA, training under registered nurses and LPN staff. They have a mentor assigned to them. In exchange for the 500 hours a year that the student works as a CNA as a paid employee, they get money put into an education fund that helps fund their LPN or RN education. St. John's United helps them secure a spot in those nursing programs. They help them apply, they help them try to obtain that. And then at the end of it, there's no requirement that they continue to work for St. John's United. They realize, hey, if we have a spot, great. If you want to go work at a major hospital or anything like that, now that you have your RN, we're okay with that. And so it is really cool, like innovative way that, and it's like they said, employer driven. It's benefiting a young person. They come out almost debt free through that program, and it's something that the collaborative helped and wants to do more of. So that's just like an example of like, hey, everyone wins out of this. It's not just the employer, it's not just the student, it's like the hospitals and our nursing workforce benefits from this. So again, just can't speak highly enough about some of the stuff that's come out of this, and want to continue to grow those stories so that they become like, this is the narrative around the collaborative and what its value is.
Yeah, that's great, Bo. And, the St. John's model is fantastic. St. John's has been an incredible employer partner for us. And based on that experience with St. John's, Emmanuel Lutheran in the Flathead is working with us on youth apprenticeships, which is awesome too. So, it's great to have the employer input on what they need. There was a comment earlier, I think it was Shane, that said, sometimes there's not a clear understanding of what employers need from people. And through all of these efforts, whether it's setting up a youth apprenticeship or placing a teacher extern, or putting together a toolkit for an employer based on the things that are not clear to them, that they tell us, I don't really understand how this works or how I would do it. Hopefully we're building awareness and confidence in doing this so that more students and more employers can benefit.
Other questions for Kelly?
Kelly, this is Dean Bentley, work at Northwestern Energy, but I guess my question is kind of going back to the forefront. Currently not doing AA schools or reaching AA schools. Is there a reason?
Yes, so as a nonprofit, we have limited resources. I have 5 outreach staff. We've done outreach in schools for 20 years. And when our board looked at what do we have the capacity to do, they felt very strongly that we focus on communities that may not have access to as many resources. So the AA schools are, of course, in our more populated counties or communities where there are other services that are provided. They all have more than one school counselor. Many of them have career counselors, like in Billings. So rather than duplicate their efforts, we wanted to make sure that we were leveraging our resources, because they are limited, working with those schools and communities that may not have as much access.
So I guess with that, hearing that, I mean, you're not if a counselor from a AA school wants to get in touch with you and collaborate, that's not out of the question. You're just not going to spend your resources to duplicate, is what I'm hearing.
Right, and that's specifically on the Reach Higher Montana side, separate from the collaborative. So the collaborative, we'll work with anybody there. And then for Reach Higher Montana, absolutely, schools that or students at AA schools can apply for our scholarships. Anyone can use our online resources. Our programming for foster youth and homeless youth, those are all serving AA students. It's our outreach staff, those outreach advisors that focus on college and career awareness and connecting students to future opportunities. Those staff work primarily with the small schools.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Thank you.
Other questions? Well, Kelly, thank you. That was great presentation, and that collaborative has accomplished a lot in a very short amount of time. I'm looking forward to spending more time with your slide deck when it gets posted on the website.
Great, thank you.
Thank you again. Next on the agenda, I'd like to turn it over to Lauren Swant and Heather O'Hara to talk about the State Nursing Workforce Center.
So good morning, everyone. I'm Heather O'Hara. Lauren and I are going to be talking today about our work in regards to workforce centers. Can you see my screen, or are you seeing Google?
We see Google, Heather.
I thought. Let's try this again.
And I can pull it up if you would like me to, just let me know. There you go.
There. All right, how's that? Right. So for those of you, most of you already know who I am, Heather O'Hara. I'll let Lauren introduce herself, but for those of you that don't know who I am and are new to the SWIB, again, my name is Heather O'Hara. I'm a registered nurse, master's prepared, have been in the healthcare industry now for over 25 years. It's hard to say that some days. And have had multiple experiences throughout my health career. Been in leadership positions. I've been a professor, have been on the floors, in the air, and recently I'm the vice president with the Montana Hospital Association and really their clinical leader here at MHA. And I really appreciate Kelly and Barb kind of helping us with today's conversation because it's all about data. So I appreciate Kelly and Barb kind of paving the way in the importance of data, because that's really what we want to talk about today, is looking at data and how we in Montana can really focus on what data we need and to use that data moving forward in collaboration with both our businesses as well as our educational partners. So I will let Lauren introduce herself, and then we'll move forward with our introductions or with our presentation.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lauren Swant, as Heather shared. I really appreciate the opportunity to get to present and be in front of you guys today. My background has been varied, kind of like Heather's, along the way. I've worked in a variety of states, and probably about half of my clinical career as a registered nurse was spent in the state of Montana. Clinically, my focus has been primarily on our populations, looking at our neonatal intensive care type patients, so our real sick babies, both in the clinical inpatient hospital setting as well as with our medevac transport teams as well. And then over the last decade or so, I have had the luxury of stepping into higher education and working as faculty, kind of growing our next generation of nurses, starting at the LPN level through the associates level and then the bachelor's level as well over the past 10 years or so. And then most recently, I have been with Carroll College as the current director of nursing here. So I am a master's prepared nurse like Heather as well, and I'm just a few short months away from finishing my doctorate in nursing practice. And workforce actually was something that in the process of obtaining my doctorate sort of became a love of mine. And if there is something that I can do to help continue to promote and grow our healthcare workforce across the board here in the state of Montana, it's kind of the piece that invigorates me and gets me excited as we go forward. So I really appreciate all of your guys' efforts with the SWIB and just looking at workforce in general, because I think that as I have come to know it, I've realized that while I play a small role in the healthcare workforce, all of it is intertwined. And a lot of the issues and challenges that we find on the healthcare side of things, and this will kind of tie to some of the stuff that Heather and I are going to talk about today, but that ultimately a huge driver of some of the challenges that we have and some of the solutions that I would like to see us have in the future for healthcare workforce are largely tied to to the workforce challenges we have in every division around the state. And so it's really, we're here to present a little bit on the healthcare workforce from kind of the state workforce center that we're going to talk about, but we're really with the acknowledgement and understanding that all of it ties together in a bigger picture piece of coming in moving the state forward, I suppose.
Okay, well, I'm going to start with a little bit of history. And as Lauren just mentioned, we're going to focus somewhat on healthcare, mainly nursing, but I want to have all of you please keep an open mind. I think what we're going to talk about today could definitely be incorporated into many different entities across the state and in many disciplines and workforce challenges that we all are experiencing across the state of Montana. So a little bit of history. Back in, I think it was 2010, the Montana Con was developed, which is the Montana Center to Advanced Health Through Nursing. It was developed in response to the Institute of Medicine and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation report, which was called The Nursing or the Future of Nursing, Leading Change and Advancing Health. This was the first effort in regards to developing somewhat of a workforce center. And as you can see, they had a mission that was developed, and under their work groups, one of the clear goals that they wanted to accomplish was collecting nursing data around education and workforce. At that time, CON partners was the Montana Hospital Association, the Montana Office of Rural Health and Area Education Centers, also known as AHECs, and then many Montana nurses across the state were also partnered and part of this initial start of the CON. The current status as of today is that the Montana Con is actually housed now under the Montana Office of Rural Health. And it continues, Montana Hospital Association, as well as the many nurses across the state are still also supporting this effort, but it has changed location and where it's kind of housed at. So I'm going to step back a little bit further. Because Montana Con had that goal to develop that workforce center and to collect data, they partnered with the National Forum of State Nursing Workforce Centers. So this is a national entity that collects data from the different states and brings that data forward and is able to do a lot of good comparisons in regards to what's going on in different states in regards to the nursing workforce. Right now, there are 40 state nursing workforce centers throughout the country that are trying to address that nursing shortage. So a little bit about the National Forum. I've already told you who is the National Forum, but what does the National Forum actually do? So it supports the advancement of new and existing nursing workforce initiatives by sharing best practices in nursing workforce research. So they do a lot of research. They help with workforce planning. They work workforce development, and they also help with the workforce policy at the national level. And they also support each state in regards to all those needed items as well. Why are state workforce centers important? And I think you guys can all figure this out, but it's really to fill that gap, trying to figure out, how many do we have existing and how many do we need? And how are we going to work collaboratively to try to fill that gap? And I think it's also important to note for each state, it is important to have a workforce center because we are unique in Montana, just like Alaska is unique or Florida is unique. We need to be able to bring forward our uniqueness and our challenges that we might have in the state of Montana, but that might be different than other states, and then work collaboratively. Wyoming has a nursing workforce center, and that would be a really nice collaborative effort for us to work with Wyoming because we're very similar in regards to what some of our challenges might be. And then what do state workforce centers impact the nursing shortage, or how do they impact the nursing shortage? There's quite a few things, like I said, we're able to share in regards to the workforce centers. They increase the number of new nurses, they recruit nurses to the profession, and they help retain those nurses once they get to that workforce or that workplace. So there's a lot of things that these workforce centers can do. I think, let me click on this and see if this will load up. Just wanted to show the map that the National Forum has. It just takes a while for it to load. Maybe. I gotta be patient. It's not one of my strengths. Anyway, when you go down to this map, you're able to hover over each state and you'll be able to see each workforce center. As you can see over Montana, North Dakota, it gives the name of the individual that you can contact. So it's a nice resource. And then you can also see what states are involved and what states aren't. I think the nice thing is if you look around the state of Montana, most of those states do have a workforce center, which would help us in collaboration and working with similar states like ours. Are we back? Where are we at?
All right,
We've
you're
got the
fine back.
slideshow.
Can you see it now?
There you go.
Yes.
Okay. And then lastly, I wanted to give you, I don't think I'll click on this. We'll just move forward. So,
Heather, if I can
yes.
interrupt, I did put the link in the chat.
Oh,
So if
perfect.
people wanted to click on that themselves, they can.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So, we'll move into the National Forum Essential Elements. So back in 2010, the National Forum started asking all the different entities across the state across the United States that had workforce centers to give them their collection tools that they actually had been using. And what they did is they brought all those collection tools together and they developed one from the National Forum. It was revamped again in 2016, and actually they're looking at revamping it again. But what I want everyone to see are the essential elements of what this data would be if we were to collect it. So as you can see, there are 7 data variables there that the National Forum collects. There's actually a total of 20, but these would be the essential elements that they think are really important when you start collecting data to have, so you can make some really informed decisions moving forward. And as you can see, variable 1 is under gender, and then you've got ethnicity, race, year of birth, highest level of nursing education, employment status, and the employer's zip code. As I said, there's like 20, or there's a total of 20, but these are the 7 that they recommend.
Heather, before you jump forward, I want to share just a point of clarification too on kind of why at the National Forum they constructed some of these, especially when we look at the last 2 variables. It is important to note that pretty much all of these variables we don't have access to in the state of Montana as it stands right now. And so what a lot of the support and guidance coming from the National Forum focuses on is the fact that right now all of our information or large amounts of our information are driven off of national data that is then extrapolated out to be theoretically representative of the state of Montana. There are some reports that DLI has access to based on voluntary information that is received at the national level from a very small proportion of nurses in the state. But things like employment status and employer zip code are still not part of that data information. And the reason that gets to be super important is that because we can look and say we have X number of nurses in the state, theoretically, we have no idea where they work. So as far as a supply and demand disparity, without the zip code of where people are working, they could all be clustered in one area, and it would look as though the state was equitably supplied with nurses, when in reality, we probably have large pockets that are very underrepresented. And so without that data, we don't have the ability to actually draw out what it looks like for the state. And there's a lot of states that are encountering this, where the national data actually says they have a surplus of nurses, but all of their labor demands are screaming, saying that they don't have enough. And so it having some of that information, I think, gets us to be able to draw just a much clearer picture of what our supply and demand actually looks like from a localized level versus taking that national data down.
Thank you, Lauren. Yes, that is our challenge, because right now, even though the Montana Con exists, they aren't collecting data right now, because we don't have a way to collect that data. And what they're typically doing in other states is they're collecting that data upon licensure renewal or upon initial licensure. So as you all know, or probably know, RNs and LPNs in the state of Montana have to get a license in order to practice. So both Lauren and I have a license in the state of Montana. And so when we renew, right now, we're not providing them any data in regards to anything that would be, we don't give them any data, honestly. So as representing hospitals, and Lauren representing some of our schools, I don't know how we make decisions moving forward without that data. And so the National Forum has this really nice platform for us to be able to use, but right now we're not able to collect that data. So that's why we wanted to bring it forward today, is that we would like to talk about how we can collect that data, but I think we need to think about it bigger than that. There are actually, there are 38 professional boards that are licensed individuals in the state of Montana under the Department of Labor and Industry. And none of those boards collect data. And it's not just healthcare that need licenses. So I printed off all the boards, and I'm not going to tell you all 38, but there's architects, there's boiler operator programmers, there's crane hosting operator programs, there are nursing, obviously, there's outfitters, there's plumbers, there's engineers, accountants, real estate appraisers. I mean, and the list goes on, and a lot of them are healthcare related. But I guess what I would like to bring forward to all of you is really asking the question, is this something that SWIB would be interested in supporting, data collection in Montana, in support with DLI. I think DLI is a great partner in collecting data. A lot of times, though, that data, like what Lauren just suggests or just explained, is from the national level. So sometimes it's not very specific to the state of Montana. And also that data can be somewhat old sometimes. So if we were able to collect data on initial licensure or on renewals, we would get that data real time, and we'd be able to know exactly what's going on in regards to how many nurses we have, how many architects we have, how many engineers we have, how many plumbers we might have. So I see a big opportunity here ahead of us in regards to possibly collecting this data in partnership with the Department of Labor and Industry. So, Lauren, did you have anything you wanted to add to that before we go into the discussion points?
I think the other piece, and just for a little bit of background information, especially with the healthcare side of it, I think the other challenge that we have is we have the ability to report out how many licenses exist or are active in the state, but that doesn't necessarily correlate directly to how many are actually working in the state as well, and in what settings. So for example, and Heather, I hope I'm okay in calling both of us out in this, but yeah, we both maintain active RN licenses. So we show up in the list of the pooled number of RN active licenses in the state. Neither of us are practicing at the bedside. That doesn't mean I'm not a nurse. I'm a nurse in a very different capacity. And for my job in particular, I can't maintain my position without an RN active license in the state of Montana. And so the information that we have, even at the local level, isn't necessarily a very accurate reflection of who is actively employable in certain areas. The other piece that we have that makes it a little bit more challenging to determine exactly what we have from a workforce standpoint in the state is nurses in Montana can apply for a multi-state license. So a lot of our students don't necessarily have a job when they graduate if they don't definitively know where they're going. They get a Montana license because that Montana license allows them now to immediately practice in 38 other states. And until they have a primary residence in any of those other 38 states, they maintain and work off of their Montana license wherever they go. So again, we don't have an accurate number of how many are actually physically working in the state of Montana if all we operate off of is the current data stream that we have publicly available. And that's usually put out in those DLI reports like every 2 years or so that we get.
Yeah. So, and another point to make, I think is important. We talked about the minimal data set. So there's 7, but there's also 20 questions total. And of those 20 questions, there's one that's variable 13 asks about your employment status. So are you full-time? Are you part-time? Are you retired? Are you unemployed? Whatever it may be. And then variable 17 or variable 18 actually asks what your employment setting is. So are you in acute care? Are you in community health? Are you in, ambulatory care, school services, occupational health? There's a lot of things that we can collect at time of renewal or at time of initial licensure. So then we can provide that information to our educators. Because when we ask an education program, especially a nursing program, to increase their number of enrollees or number of students, they just like every entity who's looking at trying to expand something, they have to look at their return on investment, right? The ROI. And so how do we ask our partners in education to expand things when they don't know what the need might be because we don't have the data in front of us? So, and then lastly, one other point before we go to the discussion points is Montana seeks quite a bit of help in regards to grants, national grants. And because we don't have the data to be able to submit in that application with grant applications, we sometimes lose out in some of these workforce grants because we don't have the data to show the need or, again, that missing link. So we're missing out on opportunities because we don't collect that data and have that data readily available when we're making application for grants. So those are some of the things that we want to talk to you about today. And I want you to think, we're coming from a very healthcare oriented position, but I think this could be also very relevant in other industries across the state. Like we have 38 licensing bodies at the Department of Labor. So I'd like you to open it up for conversation. I'd like to talk, kick this around and talk about it. I know Wes has also been working with some other workforce centers across the nation and might be able to provide some input. But some of the discussion points is, do you think the SWIB would be interested in supporting data collection in Montana? And how would we be able to support that? What other benefits do you see in collecting data? Do you see the importance of collecting data for other disciplines? And do you see the importance of that collaboration between the schools and the data? So I'd like to open it up for conversation.
Thank you, Heather. It's really interesting. I think that the conversation that you and Lauren brought up about the whole dispersion, if you think about Montana being, the bulk of our communities and the bulk of the area in Montana sit outside our 5 major cities. And I like your, as I was thinking, and I think, you made a very good point that, that goes to electricians and plumbers and other parts. And I think this is a question. Part of this, would this then tie into how we allocate dollars from an apprenticeship focused standpoint, programmatically? I mean, if it looks like you've got, whether it's nursing or plumbers in the northeastern corner of the state, pick Culbertson, Plentywood kind of area up there, does that then help how we think about focusing efforts on apprenticeships as a state to target that versus just kind of open it up anywhere and you're just going to get more plumbers and billings?
I think it's, go ahead, Lauren.
I was just going to share from the education standpoint. So before I came to Carroll, I was the director of the nursing program at Great Falls College, and worked pretty closely with the grant that we had gotten to kind of build out the LPN program under the conditions that it had to have a remote component so that we could target certain populations that were outside of city proper Great Falls. You know, I think if nothing else, what this does is it really provides a very clear centralizing focus on how to utilize the resources in the way that it's going to be the most effective. Because turning to a program, apprenticeship, nursing, electrician, whatever it might be, to say you need to get bigger or we need to implement this, it's far more effective to give a very clear guideline on how you need to grow it so that you're actually impacting those smaller communities and you're actually impacting the challenges that they're facing directly. You know, building a remote program is great, but if they don't have high level Wi-Fi where you're trying to sell it, it doesn't matter, right? So it really allows you to be able to kind of identify all of the barriers that you then I think could address from those allocation standpoints or the support structure that would need to go into it. I think that would be huge.
Perfect. Thank you. I'll just open it up to the collective group for thoughts.
I can add one piece while folks may be coming on as well. This has come up with other state workforce boards, and in other states, state workforce boards are very centrally coordinating with the nursing workforce centers. I have reached out and I'm hoping to learn more from some other states. Haven't gotten responses yet, but as those come in, I would be happy to share as well if this continues to be explored.
And can I ask Heather and Lauren, I mean, there's private entities that are looking at the opportunities to go into, you know, this world and healthcare education and centralizing a training platform and Praxis Center in Butte. They've committed, they're working towards that. How does that affect your guys' overall goal? And I mean, as a collaborative group here in the state, we look at the overall collaboration of workforce development. So is private industry on board? Are they, you know, hey, stay away from you guys? How's that interaction going, I guess?
I think, Dean, that I think all industries right now, as you know, I mean, you're feeling it too. We all have workforce challenges across the state. And whether it be working with private entities or with OPI or DLI, I think this is an opportunity for all of us to collaboratively work together. I don't see where the hospitals in the state would be opposed to this at all. I mean, they need the data too. And then they can collaborate with their higher education institutions, you know, to support them in regards to whatever needs there might be. So well, and I tend to be very optimistic at most times, and I share everything, and I'm a pretty open book. So I'd like to think that everyone would want to collaborate and work together, because ultimately I think it would better all of us, our students, our communities, and, you know, all the entities that we work with. So I don't know. I know that's a very rose-colored answer, but that's how I feel.
Dean, I think the other thing that is important that we probably neglected to share is that in order to have a nursing workforce center in the state, to be authorized to utilize the National Forum resources, you have to be the only one. There can't be 18 different workforce centers in the state all looking at this. You all have to agree to come together to be a workforce center with different representatives. Otherwise, you can't actually call yourself a workforce center under the guise of the National Forum. So I think that helps is in that there's a forced collaboration a little bit to some extent. And to be honest, I think from a private industry standpoint, I'm not a business person by rights. It's definitely not my degree training. But I would think that having the data available to determine the ROI in building a for-profit center regardless of the motivation behind where you're coming in, having information on what's available to you, what the pipeline looks like, how to work best in that community, how to support the community that you're going to be a part of. All of that's important information for them just as much as it is for the private Catholic colleges or the state schools or anybody else that's kind of getting involved. So I would actually think it's probably a win-win. And I tend not to be the rose-colored glasses person. So Heather and I balance out kind of nicely in that capacity.
Well, that's good. And I guess, my question not only to, the public and private sector of these training agencies or whatever we want to call them here. I was just kind of looking at your board involvement on your guys' website and, Lauren, given your background, all the other post-secondary schools that are addressing healthcare education, are they all being a player at the table here? Are you seeing shortfalls? I'm wearing my Montana Tech alumni stuff here, so I'm going, who do I need to call at Montana Tech to say, get your butts in gear, get a hold of Lauren? Are you guys seeing some shortfall on here that we can leverage our SWIB board to help get some more involvement here?
Heather, I'm going to turn that one to you. I know we just sent out a survey last week to all of the nurses in the state that we have access to email addresses for, basically putting out a survey of interest on how would you like to contribute as we move this forward. I will say, I think funding has been a hurdle, and that's not just us, that's workforce centers across the country. And when you look at each of the different states, there's a variety of different ways these workforce centers are sponsored. Some are donation, some are a 403c
501c3.
501, thank you. I'm missing numbers. Some are housed in the Board of Nursing, and so everyone has a little bit of a different structure, but I think probably one of our bigger hurdles in the last few years has been our representation. It's all volunteer. So for me, this is above and beyond. It's tied to my job because I feed the pipeline. So I have a vested interest in it and a passion behind it, but all of us are doing this in addition to our daily jobs. There's no staff allocated just for this. And so I think that's probably a balancing act that we see ebb and flow as programs are reprioritizing their efforts, I think, depending on what's going on.
So like those entities that are workforce centers that are connected to the Board of Nursing, sometimes there is a small fee that is associated with each licensee when they renew their license or when they do their initial license that goes towards that workforce center to support the workforce center's work, whether it be an FTE or whatever it may be. And then there's some workforce centers that are actually associated with or partnered with higher education. So and that's right now, that's where the con is. Con is really just a name only. It's not an entity that's actually honestly doing anything right now, because we just like Lauren said, there isn't money and there isn't people are doing it out of they're just doing because they think it's important, but it's not in addition to their day jobs, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So trying to figure out how we can work collaboratively with SWIB and maybe get some forward moving action, but not just have it be related to nursing. And I see that Senator Nolan has his hand up. Senator?
You, being new to the SWIB board, but not new to politics and new to how the process works. As legislators, we look at numbers. We looked at statistics. And so the question was asked, do you think it would be helpful if we gathered this kind of information? And from my standpoint, that's how I make my decisions. A lot of you have been in our, and I chair business and labor. I look at stuff and I ask the questions, well, how do you know that? These are our statistics. These are our facts. This is what we find. So I think it would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I think Lauren and I are definitely on the same page as you, and as well as I think the rest of the SWIB members. Money is definitely limited, and we want to make sure that we use our resources, whether it be money or people or whatever it may be, in the best way that we can. And having data definitely helps us with those decisions.
Heather, can you help me understand? I think having the data makes a lot of sense. What would that look like in terms of whether it's SWIB, DLI? How do you see the interface with the 37 other boards, and
So I have, and I haven't been able to have the opportunity because, as you know, Commissioner Swanson just started. She's just getting her feet under her, and Barb is relatively new to her role as well. So I don't know if this is something that we need to do, whether it be if we need to do it legislatively. I don't know that, or if we can move forward with just developing rules somehow. But if this discussion continued, I'd obviously work with the Department of Labor and Industry, because those boards are housed under DLI, and try to figure out what the best avenue would be to be able to move forward. I'm sure I'd have to meet with a lot of the boards and have that conversation, because like I said, there's 37 boards, but I know the Board of Nursing in the past have been very open to this, and they want the data too. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Okay. No, it does. Thank you. And I was just thinking that might be really helpful to, if kind of a line of sight pathway might help in terms of, how SWIB does engage and what role there might be. And I guess, is that something that maybe, I hate to put people on the spot here, but Wes, could maybe you work with Heather and Lauren on, how would this look in terms of maybe as a next step?
I've already sent out a couple of messages, and I've tapped Heather for a number of things in the past, and would be happy to work with her to see if this is a possibility, and to see kind of what what other states are doing. Number one, that I have reached out to get a framework, but number two, to see what may be needed for the SWIB to help be a catalyst for this type of opportunity with nursing, but also potentially with other professions, as Heather and Lauren have brought up. So happy to continue that conversation and maybe give an update in October where things stand.
Awesome. Thank you.
And
I would
Chair,
love that.
just mentioned too, one other thing here. I recognized steering committee for this is Casey Blumenthal. Casey was a past SWIB board member here, so,
Yep.
so happy to see that name pop up there. And if she's involved, happy to put myself out there to say if there's anything we can do to help catalyst this. Happy to do so too.
Excellent. Thank you. Other questions for Heather and Lauren?
We sure appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for listening to us and maybe having that same love of data and trying to move forward for the state of Montana and workforce. Thank you.
Perfect. It sticks with the theme of the day, Heather. It's data and persistence. So
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
perfect.
And I know I'm a new face for sure, and I appreciate that all of you have taken this time. Both Wes and Heather have my email contact information here at Carroll, and so if there's anything from a follow-up standpoint that I can help with or contribute to, don't hesitate to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we've got a bit of luxury here in time. If we could take a break, if everyone could be back at 12:20. Our next item of business is actually an old business, talk about bylaws, and it's going to require a vote. So if you'd like to take a quick 5, I think we got 7 minutes according to Apple time, which has now become the standard of the world. 7 minutes, be back at 12:20. We will jump into the next topic.
And I will pause the recording and resume it when we come back at 12:20.
Great. Thanks, Wes. It's 12:20. So our next item on the agenda is an old business item. It is to talk about the SWIB bylaws. And Wes has worked really hard on this. It's gone through exhaustive review. And Wes, I'm just going to turn it over to you to explain that and talk about the bylaws that you previously sent out in Redline.
Thank you, Chair Huffov. As you all may recall from our last meeting in Helena in May, there was quite a discussion about the bylaws. This is a requirement by the U.S. Department of Labor that we update our bylaws. Currently, they state that aside from the Commissioner of the Department of Labor, the Superintendent of Public Instruction, and the Governor, that there is no opportunity for a designee and or proxy. That is counter to the federal WIOA law that there, unless the state otherwise does not allow it, we must allow the opportunity within our bylaws for that. So if you'll recall, we had a conversation, there was some clarification requested. And so working with the Lieutenant Governor herself, along with the legal counsel here at Department of Labor and Industry, we took into consideration the previous version of the bylaws that the Department of Labor said would be sufficient, along with the comments and further clarifying what a proxy and what a designee are. It is not referenced in state law what those two items are, but we have more so clarified them for the purposes of the SWIB bylaws. So I did send those out. Just to point out for you all, there's a little bit more clarification and verbiage of how you go about the process of identifying a designee or proxy. And then to define them a little bit more is that a designee is a standing individual from the three positions previously mentioned. And a proxy is a meeting by meeting individual with some certain requirements that are within the reading for other board members that they could have if they needed to miss a meeting. It is also, again, not a requirement, it is a choice, but we further clarified what that looks like. And one that I will mention continues, the administrator of vocational rehab per that federal law cannot have a designee. So all of these fun things and pieces that we had to take into consideration. But again, with the Lieutenant Governor and with the legal counsel here at Department of Labor and Industry, along with numerous comments from the U.S. Department of Labor, we feel that this is now sufficient. So I'll stand for any questions if there are any.
So Wes, if I could just add one point, and I think just to clarify the word sufficient, this really, as amended in this bylaw, it now puts us fully in compliance with where we need to be.
Is that a question? Or just
I mean, I think it's a statement that you could correct if I'm wrong.
Yes, no, it is that is correct, Chair Huffo.
Okay. I just want everybody to understand that this is really a compliance issue that puts us in line. Dylan, your hand up.
Thanks, Chair Hoffa. I just wanted to throw in my support as well. For those that don't know, I'm the governor's designee on the board, Dylan Clapmeyer, the governor's education labor advisor. It is kind of odd, and this was discussed at the last meeting, kind of odd for us to have proxies. We don't typically do that in Montana with boards and commissions, but because this really is a federally driven board, you know, the lieutenant governor, as Wes said, has looked at it, and you know, we're comfortable with where the bylaw language ended up falling, recognizing that this is being federally driven. Thanks, Wes and Chair Hoffa.
Thanks, Dylan.
Thanks so much, Dylan.
Are there any questions on the document for Wes? Or okay, hearing none, I would. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, sorry, Chair. This is Mike McGinley. Yeah, I was, you know, I think I maybe started a lot of conversation on proxies and what I thought of them. But reading the language in there and knowing what the Chair and Dylan has said, I agree with the bylaws changes, and I stand in support of them also, the way they're written.
Okay. Thank you. At this point, I would entertain a motion to either approve, deny, or table the bylaw changes.
Chair, this is Dean Bentley. I'd like to make a motion to approve the drafted bylaw changes as presented.
Okay, thank you, Dean.
This is Amber Terry. I'll second that motion.
Thanks, Amber. Is there any further discussion about the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Motion passes. And thank you, Wes, for all the work that you did on this to get it through the Lieutenant Governor and legal and working with USDLI. It's good to have this buttoned up. And I guess with that, I'll turn it right back over to you, Wes, for your director's update.
Well, thank you all, and thank you for your patience through that. I did appreciate the debate the last go around because I think it helps to make sure that we're doing things that do satisfy your needs and wants. So thank you for all of that. A couple of things. I typically give an update, and I'm required to give you all an update, and so I always like to. I appreciate all of your time. Otherwise, I've reached out to a number of you. We've worked on some different things in the past, and so thank you all for your time. And I encourage you to continue to reach out to me should you have questions or want to bring things to the board in the future. Couple of pieces. We have begun, and by me, but in coordination with some partners here at the Department of Labor and Industry, have begun the process of the WIO estate planning, as was mentioned with Superintendent Arnson, but also with the Office of the Commissioner of Higher Ed. There is Perkins planning, but we are also in the midst of WIO estate planning. And so we will begin convening to discuss and contribute for feedback with you all. With that, and I'm sorry, I have a frog in my throat today. With that, we will be convening the WIOA committee sometime in September. So those of you that are on the committee, I'll be reaching out to you to discuss that in more detail so that we can start adding pieces, discussing the ICR, which is out, which is the guidance from the Department of Labor for the WIOA state plan. It will be the state plan for the next 4 years. And so there are a number of components that are all the same. One piece, although the ICR is out, which is really the federal requirements, the U.S. Department of Labor typically doesn't provide guidance for that law until September or October, which is not helpful because we're supposed to be writing it in that time. But we will continue. We had a number of these conversations at the National Governors Association Summer Workforce Symposium. And so we'll start with that process soon. Otherwise, there is a timeline that I can kind of just go over with you. September, we'll convene the WIOA committee. In October, we will have a state workforce board meeting, of course, and we'll have further discussion on it there. In November, there will be some hopeful coordination, November, December, with the writing of the plan, with the WIOA committee, as well as with others. And as Commissioner Swanson had mentioned, in coordination with the Perkins state plan, trying to eliminate duplication and make sure those plans are coordinated. In January, February, there will be a SWIB meeting to approve, review, or deny, if that's what you so choose, the state plan. Then it will be posted for public comment for at least 30 days. And then for an ultimate submission to the U.S. Department of Labor by the end of March, beginning of April. We still don't have that exact date either. So once all of that's known, the timeline can be more solidified, but that's kind of just an overview of the timeline. I mentioned within that, we had meetings in Fargo last couple weeks ago. Chair Hophoff was there as well, and there was quite a significant portion of it dedicated to the state planning process. With that, one of the pieces that the U.S. Department of Labor has identified is that we do need to add and contribute more information about federal programs and other federal grant coordination. So that's something that I've also begun conversations to determine how workforce components of the other federal grants, whether it's the Inflation Reduction Act, whether it's the CHIPS Act, whatever federal legislation is coming through, how we're coordinating workforce efforts with those. And then in addition, we will also be utilizing a tool through the National Governors Association that they will soon be implementing that will help us with the technical assistance and with the writing components. They will also be a convener of all state information. So when there are questions about areas that may be of confusion, or when we submit the state plans, if we all get conditional approval based on changes, they'll help convene why those changes are required and what states are doing so and what states are not required to make certain changes. So I think it'll be a good, helpful tool and good technical assistance from a coordinated effort that we have not had before. I did mention that we went to the National Governors Association Summer Workforce Symposium in Fargo. Chair Hophoff joined me there. It was great. And hopefully some of those components that were mentioned there will also be putting in the state plan and report on that otherwise. We have been hosting WIOA state and federal partner trainings throughout the state. We completed the one in Helena, Bozeman, Miles City, and Kalispell. Upcoming, there will be one in Billings, Missoula, and Great Falls. This has been a good opportunity for state agencies to collaborate more based on focused on referrals and transitions. And so I thank the Job Service, Adult Ed, and Voc Rehab for all of that and the coordinated efforts with that. We will be, one other thing, have been going through the one-stop process. I updated the board on that briefly in May. Of course, after that was completed, we received some clarification requirements from the U.S. Department of Labor that Montana is now required to have 2 comprehensive workforce centers versus 1 that we have always had in the past. It's a different interpretation of the federal law than has been interpreted before. So we've started the conversations on what that looks like as well and how to go about doing so in the most cost-effective and least intrusive way possible, while still providing as much funding to all of our workforce centers as much as possible. So I'll have an update for that for you hopefully soon as well, and where I can finally complete that certification process, but we've been on hold waiting for some further guidance from the U.S. Department of Labor, and we have some questions out to them now on that. I have been a part of the Olmstead Committee. This was through House Bill 922. It was to develop and implement a plan to ensure that state-funded services and supports for Montanans with disabilities are, to the greatest extent possible, provided in community rather than in institutional settings. This is in accordance to the requirements of the Supreme Court decision Olmstead versus LC 527. Chanda Hermanson may have additional information on this too, but there is a plan in development right now and largely framed after the Nebraska state plan. This is just to show that the state is looking to move toward a goal of more community resources versus institutional resources, and workforce is a component of that. So I have been involved in that committee, and it was again House Bill 922 that the state actually appropriated funding for as well. But is to make sure that we are in line with that Supreme Court decision. I think that those are all of the kind of updates, but looking forward to the future, there will be a meeting in October. So I hope all of your calendars should be blocked off for October 10th and 11th. It will be in Billings and hosted in part by our own Adam Gilbertson. And we will be hosting that at the Billings Public Library. And we'll host an event prior to that, the evening prior on the 10th, at RDO Equipment, learning more about technology and construction. Currently, there are some content requests for the EDA Tech Hub that Commissioner Swanson had mentioned earlier, and Chair Hopfob has also been a part of, and me on the conversations. We will have presentation on re-entry opportunities and how Second Chance Pell through the state of Montana has found success. Amy Watson with the Economist team here at DLI will provide an update with the Labor Day report that will be posted at that point. And then there will be 2 potential policy revision requests for approval as well. One is on our sanctions policy. So should providers not be meeting performance and other contractual obligations, what the sanctions policy says now is pretty vague, and so that may be updated. And then the education and training provider list. There will be a policy update there also. We received guidance from the U.S. Department of Labor on some changes that may need to be made nationwide to that list. And that's who all is approved to receive funding throughout the state. They have to be on that list. And so there's some updates to that process. So more to come on that as well. A lot of information for you all, but just trying to keep you updated on where things stand. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them now.
Questions for Wes? Okay, thank you, Wes. I don't have closing remarks. I'm going to do my level best to give you back as much of your lunch hour as possible. But I thank you all for joining today. And Wes, thank you for putting this meeting together and all the work you're doing on the October meeting. Dean, thanks for filling in while I was horsing around with the internet. Apologize for that, as well as the late start due to the technical problems. But look forward to seeing you all in Billings. Guess I'll just ask the group, for the good of the order, anything that you'd like to add before we move into our final public comment. Okay, Thank you. At this point, I will call for public comment.
Mr. Chair, Shane from the Great Falls Chamber. I know last year, many of you attended as a reception event, our Worlds of Work event that we had in Great Falls. So just want to update this board and those that are attending on our Worlds of Work event this year, this fall. It'll be on Tuesday, September 26th. We have over 70 exhibitors attending. We have schools as far as Livingston that have contacted us to bring a bus of some of their students to come attend our Worlds of Work event. So if you didn't make it last year, I'd encourage you to maybe block out that day. You don't need to block out the whole day, but a portion of it if you're able to. Want to thank Reach Hire, Kelly Cresswell for sponsoring, being a sponsor at our Worlds of Work, and then also David Smith with the Montana Contractors Association for sponsoring it as well too. So if you didn't make it last year, it is a incredible event. We're anticipating about 2,500 8th and 10th grade students attending a hands-on exploratory career exploration event. So again, Worlds of Work, Tuesday, September 26th. You're all invited to come and attend.
And
Thank you for that, Shane.
Can you provide us with if there's something I can send out to the group with other follow-up, I'd be happy to as well.
Okay, you bet. Thank
Excuse
you.
me, Chair Hotfox. Thank you.
Thanks, Shane. That is a exceptionally well done event, and it's just super impressive. You guys have done a terrific job with that Worlds of Work. And when we got to go to that, I think last year, my 6 hours drive back to Glendive, like just, sparked all kinds of ideas. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any public comment?
Mr. Chair, this is Patty Fleming.
Hey, Pat, go ahead.
Yeah, the manufacturing day always occurs first Friday in October. There's going to be some very significant events throughout the state, including Billings, Kalispell, Missoula, and Bozeman. So if you get a chance, please take in those events. But I know Bo is going to be heavily involved in the one in Billings. Thanks.
What is the date again on that, Patty?
It's the first week. Each town's kind of doing it different, so I don't have all their dates in front of me.
Thank you, sir.
Great. Thanks, Patty. Okay. Any other comments? Hearing none, we stand adjourned, and thank you again for giving us a part of your day for this meeting.